Hey guys, tonight we're pulling an all-nighter on the graveyard shift. The air in the squad car is thick, cold, and smells faintly of old coffee and ozone. Outside, the Bronx is a study in wet, reflective blacks and pale neon yellow. It's 0200 hours, and the rain, which started as a drizzle, is now a relentless curtain tapping a precise, rhythmic cadence against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep the glass clear. This isn't the chaotic roar of rush hour. This is the quiet, meticulous terror of the midnight patrol. The hours when the city's concrete shell cracks open and the things we usually keep sealed away start to bleed out into the fog. The radio static hums, a low, constant white noise that sounds less like electronic interference and more like a whispered conversation happening just at the edge of hearing. We run on routine up here, on the rigid structure of the job. Protocol is the only thing that separates the mundane from the massacre, the only barrier between us and the raw, hungry darkness of the forgotten streets. You probably won't make it to dawn after this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I'm Sergeant Miller. I've been running the 4 to 6 sector for 20 years, and in this job, 20 years means you've learned that the true horror isn't the perp with the gun. It's the vacuum left when the rules disappear. That's what keeps me alive. The procedure, the checklist, the redundant checks. Everything is logged, everything is reported, everything is contained. Tonight, though, the perimeter feels soft. The standard operating procedure, the very foundation of my shift, is starting to wobble. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. It helps me remember that there's a world beyond this squad car, beyond the reach of the 4 to 6 frequency. Now, dim the lights, maybe crack open a window for that midnight fog, and let's hit the streets together. The night starts with a procedural snag that I should have ignored, but didn't. I pull up to the lot to get my designated patrol unit, 4 Sierra 40. The engine catches easily. The lights flicker on, flooding the narrow alley between the precinct and the bodega with blue light. But when I reach over to pull the unit's official logbook from the glove compartment, the standard 10 to 7 form for vehicle inspection and patrol reporting, it's missing. Protocol anchor. The 10 to 7 logbook must remain with the vehicle at all times. It is the unit's official history, noting mileage, fuel, equipment checks, and most importantly, the driver's name and shift duration. It's minor, maybe a rookie left it on the desk inside, but it's a violation of chain of custody. A crack in the foundation. I step out, the cold air hitting my face immediately, carrying the scent of wet garbage and distant sewage. I walk back into the precinct house. The station floor is mostly empty, bathed in the sickly green light of the fluorescent tubes overhead. The desk officer, Officer Davis, is buried under paperwork, headphones on. Davis, I snap, my voice echoing slightly in the silence. The 10 to 7 for 4 to 40. Where is it? Davis jumps, pulling off his headphones. Sarge? Oh, it's right here. It was sitting on the central processing desk when I came on. Didn't look like anyone signed it out. Figured it was leftover. He hands me a thin, binder-clipped book. The cover is faded blue, the ink inside looking older than yesterday's shift. I flip to the latest entry. The line for the current date, October 29th, is blank. But the line above it, dated 3 days ago, has my signature. And beneath that, dated tomorrow, is another one. The log is filled out sporadically, skipping dates, jumping forward and back in time like a corrupted file. This log is useless, Davis. Someone is filing reports completely out of order. Maybe the book is just old, Sarge. We got so many floating around. I take the book, tucking it into my vest pocket. I'll cross-reference the numbers later, but the simple act of the procedural log being out of place settles a heavy, damp feeling in my stomach. The protocol is not optional. It's the ritual we perform to ward off chaos. And if the ritual is flawed, what comes next? Back in the car, I start my mandatory equipment check. Flashlight, cuffs, sidearm, all accounted for. I check the radio frequency. Dispatch is a low, comforting burble of routine calls. A domestic dispute on Tremont. A car alarm on Grand Concourse. Then the static spikes. It's sharp, abrasive, cutting through the dispatch frequency like a razor blade dragged across a chalkboard. Supernatural element. The static resolves itself, not into a voice, but into a series of highly formalized whispers. Words too precise, too structured to be human error. 4. Sierra, 40, failure to adhere. Unit 10 to 7 compromised. Repeat. Failure to adhere to 10 to 8 duty protocols. Correction required. It's completely unauthorized. Dispatch isn't using the term failure to adhere. They use specific penal codes. And the term compromised is usually reserved for a secure location, not a patrol log. It's a spectral voice, monotone, deeply cold, and utterly official. It sounds like a machine reading policy violations from a manual written in a graveyard. I grab the mic. Dispatch, 4, Sierra 40. What was that transmission? Identify unit, please. The actual dispatcher, a woman named Teresa, cuts in, sounding exhausted. 4 to 40, that was negative for us, Sergeant. Just standard traffic. Are you getting bleed over? Negative, Teresa. It was clear, highly specific, sounded automated, almost. Silence from dispatch, just the usual hum. I stare at the dash. The logbook in my pocket suddenly feels heavy, saturated with a cold I can't explain. I open the book again, flipping to the section marked Incident Log. There, scrawled in faint, barely legible pencil beneath my own signature from 3 days ago, is a single word: unsolved. The hair on the back of my neck rises. We don't write that in the 10 to 7. We use code 10 to 88, investigation pending, or 10 to 90, case closed. Unsolved is an emotional judgment, something reserved for the locker room, not the official report. I pull out onto the wet street, the tires spraying water onto the curb. The rhythm of the night has changed. The routine comfort of the patrol, the familiar route past the darkened storefronts, now feels like treading water over something very deep and very old. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They are meant only to be endured, and perhaps, occasionally, they are meant to catch the attention of someone trying too hard to follow the rules. This compromised logbook feels like the first thread being pulled from the tapestry of my shift. If the logs are wrong, the records are wrong. If the records are wrong, then who am I, and where am I going? And why did that spectral voice on the radio sound so absolutely certain of my procedural failure? It's that certainty, that cold adherence to a ghost protocol, that chills me more than the supernatural sound itself. I check the clock. 0217. The night stretches ahead, impossibly long. I tap the brakes. My first official act of the shift is a violation. I am driving around with a compromised logbook, and I haven't filed the mandatory 10 to 23, arrived at destination, for my patrol sector. The cold, mechanical voice already knows. The cold voice is gone, swallowed back by the generalized static hiss, but the feeling of being monitored persists. It's like wearing a wet uniform. You can't shake the chill. I try to reassure myself with the familiar rhythm of the street, the way the sodium vapor lamps turn everything an unnatural, bruised yellow. The sound of the car hitting the uneven pavement. I file my 10 to 23 over the mic, making sure my voice is steady and formal. 4, Sierra, 40, 10 to 23, entering sector perimeter. Beginning routine patrol. Teresa confirms the entry, thankfully not mentioning the earlier transmission. But as I settle into the route, looping past the Grand Concourse's pre-war apartment buildings, the radio crackles again, but this time, it's not dispatch. It's the second radio unit, the one designated for inter-unit communication, the one that usually only spits out patrol banter or requests for backup from a neighboring sector. Supernatural element, a low, distorted distress code, 10 to 13, filters through the internal radio. It's weak, almost swallowed by white noise, but unmistakable. Code 10 to 13. Officer needs assistance. Protocol anchor. Code 10 to 13 is the highest priority. Standard protocol dictates that the unit receiving the 10 to 13 immediately broadcasts it back to dispatch with a location, if provided, and begins immediate response, regardless of sector. Dispatch then vectors 3 minimum units to the location for backup, with a supervisor, me, confirming command structure upon arrival. Failure to report a 10 to 13 is catastrophic. I lean forward, the blood suddenly hammering against my eardrums. 4 to 40, unit broadcasting 10 to 13, state your location and need. Nothing, just the ragged static breathing in and out of the speaker. I hit the push to talk button for dispatch. Teresa, 4 to 40. Did you just log a 10 to 13? A pause. Negative, 4 to 40. We show the board clear. Unless you heard something internal. Affirmative. Internal transmission. Highly distorted. Sounded like a code 10 to 13. Okay, 4 to 40. If you can't identify the unit or location, hold fire. Do not deploy resources based on unknown source. That is Directive 5.04, Section C. Directive 5.04, Section C. Avoidance of unnecessary risk. Never respond to an unverified distress signal. It could be a setup. It could be a hallucination. It could be a phantom call. But it was a 10 to 13. My mind races, trying to reconcile the ironclad rulebook with the gut-punch certainty that someone out there is in danger. What if the officer is incapacitated, unable to state their location clearly? Protocol dictates verification, but my oath dictates response. I pull the patrol log from my pocket again. The word unsolved seems to darken the page. I stare at the radio, the physical piece of equipment, and realize the static sounds concentrated, localized to a small corner of the sector, down near the old meatpacking district. An abandoned industrial zone where the tall shadows feel like they're holding their breath. I make my choice. It's a violation. A deliberate, calculated breach of 5.04. Teresa, I am proceeding with caution toward the industrial zone near 178th Street. I believe the interference is localized there. I'll maintain radio contact. I am going 10 to 17 en route. 4 to 40. This is against standing orders. Do you require a supervisory override? Teresa sounds strained, worried about the paperwork I'm creating. Negative, Teresa. This is a supervisory decision. Proceeding code 1. Non-emergency, discreet. I hit the accelerator, ignoring the rising static that accompanies my movement. As I drive, the internal radio suddenly clears, and a different sound cuts through the hiss. The sharp, metallic clang of a dropped flashlight hitting concrete, followed by a grunt of pain. No words, just the sound of a struggle, cut off abruptly by a flat, dead silence. My heart is pounding hard enough to shake the steering wheel. This wasn't static. It was a recording, or worse, a real, active event that failed to register on the main grid. I pull the unit onto 178th, a street lined with darkened warehouses and overgrown chain-link fences. There are no streetlights here. The only illumination comes from my headlights cutting through the dense, wet fog that has rolled in from the river. I stop the car. Total silence. I turn off the engine. The sound of the rain is deafening. The investigation, I step out. The air here is colder, damper. I draw my sidearm and move slowly, the beam of my heavy-duty flashlight sweeping across the corrugated steel walls. The beam catches something, a splash of color on the dull gray of the street. It's a small, plastic evidence bag, empty, standard issue. It looks pristine, recently dropped. I move further down the alley, my boots crunching on broken glass and wet gravel. I hear nothing, see nothing, but the feeling of presence is overwhelming. I round the corner of a massive, disused refrigeration plant. The wall here is marked with spray-painted gang tags, but high up, above the level of typical street art, there's something else. A symbol drawn in what looks like dried, dark motor oil. It's a simple geometric shape, a closed square with a single, downward-pointing arrow inside it. It looks like an ancient traffic sign. And then I see the source of the 10 to 13. Or, rather, the absence of the source. There's an old Ford Crown Vic parked haphazardly against the wall. The engine is cold. The unit number is taped over with black electrician's tape, but enough is showing for me to recognize the sequence. 4 Sierra 19. 4 to 19 was decommissioned 5 years ago after Sergeant Dale Hansen totaled it on the Hutchinson River Parkway. Hansen died in that crash. I approached the vehicle carefully, weapon raised. The driver's side door is wide open, hanging slightly ajar. I sweep the flashlight into the interior. Empty. Everything is meticulously clean. No blood, no struggle, just the normal accumulated dust of an abandoned police vehicle. Except for the clipboard lying on the passenger seat. I holster my weapon and carefully retrieve the clipboard. It holds the patrol schedule for 4 to 19. The date at the top is October 29, 1998. 25 years ago, the officer assigned P.O.R. Morales. Morales was Dale Hansen's partner. Morales vanished 3 days after Hansen's fatal crash. The official report said he went AWOL, suffering from PTSD, but his file remains 10 to 88. Investigation pending, not closed. I feel the cold dread settle deep into my bones. The ghost call, the abandoned car, the 25-year-old patrol sheet. I violated protocol 5.04, unnecessary risk, to investigate a ghost who was searching for a ghost. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They exist outside the jurisdiction of human procedure, waiting for someone to breach the rules and walk into their timeline. The static in my ear doesn't feel like interference anymore. It feels like a doorway. I'm holding the patrol schedule of a man who vanished after his partner died, a schedule dated exactly 25 years before tonight. The only difference between a good night and a tragedy is the strict adherence to the checklist. I just ripped up the checklist. The paper feels brittle in my hands, smelling faintly of river humidity and cigarette smoke, a ghost scent. I stuffed the 1998 schedule into the pocket containing my current, compromised logbook. 2 failures of protocol riding side by side in my vest. I call on my location update, 10 to 21, to Teresa, omitting any mention of the phantom car or the ghost officer's paperwork. I simply report checking an abandoned vehicle due to a civilian call I decided to follow up on. More lies, more procedural gaps. The structure is crumbling fast. I need a return to normalcy, to the rigidity of real policing, to ground myself. I need a real perp, a tangible threat, something that requires the immediate application of codified rules. I get back into 4 to 40 and pull away from the abandoned warehouse. As I drive out of the industrial park, the fog momentarily lifts, revealing a small park across the street, known locally as the Triangle, notorious for late-night drug activity. I see movement near the wrought iron fence. A figure is leaning against a tree, obscured partially by a thick shroud of ivy. Protocol anchor. Standard procedure dictates a 10 to 55 suspicious person stop. Pre-contact requires confirming unit status, location, and reason for stop, followed by the officer's safety rule. Maintain distance, observe hands, confirm identity. The goal is to enforce the rule of law and secure the subject without violating the constitutionally mandated limits of authority. Confirm identity is key. I slow the car, rolling down the passenger window slightly. The figure straightens up as my headlights hit them. It's a young man, early 20s, wearing clothes that look slightly too large for his frame, a hooded sweatshirt and baggy jeans. He doesn't look startled, just waiting. I put the unit in park. Evening. Police. Step away from the fence and put your hands where I can see them. My voice is measured, calm, trained to de-escalate. The young man complies immediately, but his movements are slow, almost painfully deliberate, like a film frame rate dropping. He keeps his face shadowed by the hood. I exit the vehicle, keeping my distance. I need you to show me some ID. What are you doing out here tonight? Waiting, the subject replies. His voice is a dry, rasping whisper that seems to vibrate in the air rather than travel. Waiting for what? For the sergeant, he says. I freeze. I'm the sergeant. How did you know that? You're the one who found the book. The law book. The one who broke the signal rule. My stomach drops. This is no ordinary street kid. This is tied to the radio anomaly, the 10 to 7 log, the ghost patrol. I raise my voice slightly, maintaining the required stern cadence. Turn around slowly. I need to confirm your identity. He turns, and the moment the light catches his face, I feel the hair on my arms prickle. He is impossibly pale, his features slightly blurry around the edges, as if he's vibrating at a frequency my eyes can't fully process. His eyes, however, are sharp, dark, deep-set, and fixed on the front dash of my patrol car, where the radio sits. Supernatural element. The suspect is translucent, a physical manifestation tied to the procedural failure. When I command him to turn, I see that the back of his hoodie is branded with the symbol from the abandoned warehouse wall, the closed square with the downward arrow. He speaks again, his voice now laced with a bitter nostalgia. Protocol 10 to 66. Failure to report. That's what killed my partner. 10 to 66 is an old, retired code that used to mean suicide. It was decommissioned decades ago due to lack of use and stigma. It's not in the current manual. Who are you? I demand, taking a measured step closer, my hand near my weapon. A consequence, he replies, and then his entire frame shivers, blurring into the ivy wall behind him. You need to finish the file. The original violation. I blink, certain I'm hallucinating from lack of sleep and the chilling proximity of the supernatural. When I open my eyes, he's gone. Not fled, not run, simply disappeared into the shadows and the wet foliage. I rush forward, sweeping the area with my flashlight. Nothing. He couldn't have vaulted the iron fence that quickly. He couldn't have evaporated. My heart is hammering, not from fear of assault, but from the violation of reality. I violated the distance rule, Protocol 1.03, maintaining safety zone, and he used that window to escape. As I shine the light over the ground where he stood, I see something glinting in the wet gravel. It's a police shield, heavily tarnished, bent almost in half, numbered 419. P.O.R. Morales, the same officer from the 1998 patrol schedule I'm carrying. I pick it up, the metal shockingly cold, even through my gloves. The suspect wasn't just a ghost. He was the messenger of the ghost, or perhaps the physical projection of Morales' final, unsolved moment. The realization hits me. The kid, the ghost, whatever he was, knew about the compromised logbook, and he knew about my procedural failure to report the 10 to 13 honestly. The system itself, the rules, are the targets of this haunting. I scramble back to the safety of the squad car, locking the doors automatically. I feel a wave of profound despair wash over me. The adherence to protocol is supposed to keep us safe, but what happens when the protocol itself becomes the instrument of the haunting? When the violations you commit are precisely what the spectral entities want you to commit? The badge of Morales burns cold in my palm. The official file states he went AWOL. But the ghost of the street, the manifestation of his unlogged trauma, tells a different story. A 10 to 66, a suicide caused by a failure to report. Was Morales the one who broke protocol, or did his partner, Hansen, break a rule that led to Morales' despair? The shield is the only piece of evidence tied to the case that has ever surfaced. I look at the patrol log again. Unsolved. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They are meant to persist, living in the gaps of the official paperwork, waiting for a sergeant foolish enough to cross the line between policy and impulse. And now, I have Morales' shield, a piece of evidence that officially does not exist, and a history that is demanding its resolution. The shift is no longer a patrol. It's an audit of my own integrity, supervised by the dead. I'm moving fast now, desperate to get back to the precinct, to the fluorescent lights and the dull reality of Davis hunched over his headphones. I need to file this shield, enter it as physical evidence, and attempt to run the old 4 to 19 case data again. But the moment I turn the unit around toward the 46th precinct, the radio flares up. Not static, but a smooth, melodic male voice, like a 1940s radio announcer, cutting across all frequencies. 4, Sierra 40. Your itinerary is incorrect. You have deviated 3.4 miles from designated 10 to 22 route. Proceed to corrective sequence. The voice is cultured, calm, and terrifyingly precise. It sounds like the rules themselves are speaking. Supernatural element. The voice initiates time distortion via route correction. As I try to turn left onto the main avenue, the GPS unit on my dashboard starts flashing an error message. Route not found. Time out of sequence. I slam the steering wheel. Dispatch, who is that? I need an ID on that broadcast. Teresa is back, her voice tight with panic. Sarge, we're not getting anything but silence on your channel. There's no voice override. Are you experiencing equipment failure? Negative, Teresa. It's clear as day. It's telling me my patrol route is incorrect. I'm heading back to the precinct. The cultured voice immediately overrides her, whispering, "The precinct is unavailable at this juncture. You must resolve the 10 to 66 violation before returning to the official 10 to 8 roster. The shift log requires it." The shift log, the procedural anchor that governs the flow of time and duty. I feel a terrible pull back toward the industrial shadows I just fled. I check my watch. 0305 hours. I've only been out for 48 minutes. but it feels like the whole night is passing simultaneously. Protocol anchor. To attempt to re-establish control, I decide to follow a protocol related to evidence recovery. I must officially log the finding of Morales' shield, 10 to 85, evidence recovery. I can't do this in the car. It must be done at a secure, well-lit location. I pull into the only place that feels both secure and archival, the public records office parking lot, which, thankfully, stays lit all night. I pull out the 3 crucial documents: my compromised 10 to 7 log, Morales' 1998 schedule, and the newly recovered shield. I'm trying to impose order on a chaos. I open my log and start writing a quick, official report on the discovery of the shield, but the words blur. I need to cross-reference the original 1998 AWOL report. I use my laptop and secure login to access the precinct's deep archives. It takes a frustratingly long time to bypass the obsolete firewalls, which feel thicker than usual. When the files finally load, I navigate to the 1998 incident reports. I find POR, Morales, Unit 4 to 19. Case 98 to 4421. AWOL, suicide suspected, 10 to 66, unofficial designation. The file is thin, mostly conjecture. The critical detail is missing, the official log for the unit that night. But as I scroll down the digitized records, I find something impossible. The precinct log archive, the master schedule of all unit deployments for October 29th, not 1998, but October 29th, 2023. Tonight, I find my unit, 4 Sierra 40, Sergeant J. Miller, scheduled patrol route, Sector 4A, 0200 to 0600 hours. All correct. Then I scroll slightly further down the same physical page of the digitized log. A duplicate entry, written in the same archival ink as the 1998 entries, is present. Unit 4 Sierra 40. Officer Sergeant J. Miller. Date October 29th, 1998. Notes: Unit failure to report. Code 10 to 10, disoriented. Last known location, Sector 4A. I stare at my name, my unit number, and the exact date. October 29th, but 25 years in the past, listed with a specific procedural failure. I am currently experiencing time distortion. My log entry has been retroactively inserted into a document that governs the past. The voice crackles back into the car, cold and triumphant. Correction, you are already logged as compromised, Sergeant. The logbook is the record of your failure. You are currently repeating the patrol of 1998. I slam the laptop shut. This is the horror. It's not a monster or a ghost. It's the immutable paperwork of the NYPD, the official record, forcing me into a fatal loop. The protocol breach wasn't mine tonight. It was a breach 25 years ago, one that involved my unit number and my name. And the system is demanding I fulfill the tragic outcome of that historic failure. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They are meant to recur, using the rigid framework of official procedure, the very thing meant to prevent repetition, as their perfect snare. I am being retroactively inserted into a history where I already failed, already went 10 to 10. I look down at Morales' bent shield. Did he try to solve a crime that was deemed unsolvable by his superiors, leading him to violate a rule? Did his failure to file correctly allow the darkness to consume him? And now, am I being forced to follow his footsteps to the same dead end? Only 25 years later? The air inside the car drops sharply, and the static returns, not as a voice, but as a chilling, rhythmic hiss that sounds like the slow tearing of paper. The logbook in my pocket is vibrating. I shove the shield and the logs under the passenger seat. I need to move, to break the hold of the archive, to get out of the car, out of the sector, off the grid. If the system believes I failed 25 years ago, then every action I take now is simply fulfilling that script. I need an unscripted moment. I punch the accelerator, peeling out of the records office parking lot. I ignore the ghostly voice shouting, 10 to 22 violation. Return to assigned grid from the radio. I drive through the main thoroughfare, past the shuttered storefronts, aiming for the border of the 47th precinct. The protocol I adhere to now is simply the physical act of escape. 10 to 5, need to talk to commanding officer, and 10 to 10, disoriented, requesting relief. Although I know if I use the 10 to 10 code, the system will recognize my 1998 entry and shut me down completely. I drive for about 5 minutes, pushing the unit hard. The road is slick, but I keep the speed steady. I pass the corner of Grand Avenue and 170th Street. There's a specific detail here. A large, gaudy piece of graffiti, a red handprint, on the brick wall of a laundromat. I make a hard right onto an unfamiliar side street, trying to lose the spectral tracking. I navigate through 3 more narrow alleys, crossing what feels like a dozen blocks. I should be deep into the next sector, approaching the highway entrance. But as I round the next corner, the headlights cut through the fog and illuminate a startlingly familiar brick wall. My foot slams on the brake. Supernatural element, temporal and geographical loop. I am back at the corner of Grand Avenue and 170th Street. The laundromat is there. The specific, gaudy red handprint graffiti is there. I have driven 3 miles and arrived back at my starting point. The radio crackles with a low, mocking laugh. The cultured voice, distorted slightly by the static, but audible. You have failed to check in at mandatory location 4A7. Repeat mandatory check-in. I check the clock, 0320 hours. Only 15 minutes have passed since I left the records office, but I covered enough distance to cross into the next precinct entirely. The system, the ghost protocol, is keeping me geographically bound to Sector 4A. Protocol anchor, mandatory route reporting, 10 to 21 location status. I realize I must follow the rules of the loop if I want to escape it. I am being forced to adhere to the patrol route of Morales' last shift, the ghost route. I put the car in drive and proceed slowly. I report my location to Teresa, carefully omitting the fact that I just reported the same location 15 minutes prior. I start the loop again. I drive past the laundromat. I turn right. I navigate the 3 side streets. I feel the creeping dread of déjà vu sharpening into existential terror. When I round the final corner, the headlights hit the familiar brick wall. I am back at Grand Avenue and 170th. But this time, something is subtly different. The red handprint on the laundromat wall is still there, but it looks fresher, the paint slightly wet, dripping down the mortar joints. I look at the clock, 0325. Only 5 minutes have passed in the real world, but I've relived the same mile of street. I repeat the protocol. Check in, 10 to 21. Drive. Attempt escape. Loop 3. I arrive back at the corner of Grand and 170th. Now, the red handprint isn't paint at all. It's a smear of something thicker, darker, staining the brick. And beside the wall, slumped against the metal grate of the laundromat, is a figure. It's the young man from the park, the blurred suspect, the messenger. I pull over, heart hammering, weapon drawn automatically. I approach slowly, flashlight beam shaking slightly. He is not moving. He is lying in a small, growing pool of dark, viscous liquid. He looks less blurred now, more substantial, but horribly injured. Police, don't move, I yell, though I know the command is useless. I reach him and flip him over gently with my boot. His eyes are wide open, staring up at the rain, but they are milky white, unseeing. His chest is soaked, and the dark stain is spreading from a severe, almost impossible wound. A massive, self-inflicted laceration, perfectly horizontal, across his torso. The injury looks like he cut himself open with a sharp, heavy object. And clutched in his hand is a single, official document, folded tightly. I peel the document away. It's a standard NYPD internal affairs form. Code 10-66 Incident Review. It's filled out, but the writing is shaky and faint, as if written by a dying hand. It details the events of October 29, 1998. POR, Morales witnessed his partner, Dale Hansen, commit a grievous violation of procedure, a fatal error of discretion during a routine traffic stop, which resulted in the death of an innocent civilian. Morales, bound by the code of silence and terrified of IA investigation, failed to report the violation. 10-66, failure to report fatal protocol breach. The guilt forced him to go AWOL, which then evolved into the 10-66, suicide, designation. The protocol failure wasn't Morales' original crime. It was his failure to report the crime of his partner. The paper is damp with the figure's blood, and the final sentence, scrawled at the bottom, reads, "The protocol must be satisfied by the officer who holds the key to the log." I realized the figure on the ground wasn't the ghost of Morales. He was the physical manifestation of the unresolved report itself, forced to repeat the ultimate, fatal protocol breach, the 10-66 suicide. And I, Sergeant J. Miller, by taking the compromised logbook, am now the officer holding the key. I look up at the laundromat wall. The red handprint is gone, wiped away. The official report has been satisfied by the victim, but the ghost protocol isn't finished with me. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved. They demand completion, and that completion requires the ultimate violation, the sacrifice of the one who tries to impose order. The radio doesn't laugh this time. It just hums, low and expectant. I don't call it in. I simply put the 10-66 review form, now a bloody, terrifying piece of evidence, with the rest of the ghost inventory, the compromised log, the 1998 schedule, and Morales' bent shield. Calling in the dead body of a supernatural entity that just self-immolated according to a 25-year-old protocol failure would only finalize my 10-10 designation. I am alone, driving in a loop in a time that no longer exists, and the only way out is forward, or perhaps deeper into the ghost protocol. I drive the loop again, expecting to return to the laundromat. But this time, I make it past 170th Street. The scenery changes. The spectral barrier is gone. The sacrifice satisfied the localized haunting. I check the clock, 0335. I feel a terrible inertia pulling me, not toward safety, but toward a specific, predefined point. The patrol car seems to guide itself, despite my shaky grip on the wheel. Protocol anchor. The system demands a return to 10-8, in service, ready for assignment. However, the ghost protocol requires a final confirmation before the shift can terminate. The cultured voice is back, stronger now, clearer than the actual dispatch. It sounds like it's sitting in the passenger seat. 4, Sierra 40. Protocol completed. Outstanding item. 10-8 duty assignment. Proceed to designated unit location. 4, Sierra 19. Abandoned vehicle, 178th Street. refrigeration plant. Await relief. The ghost system is ordering me to return to the condemned vehicle of the dead officer, Morales, and wait for a relief unit that will never arrive. This is the final ritual. If I comply, I complete the loop and become the next entry in the 1998 failed log, the new occupant of the missing officer file. I grip the mic, negative, ghost command. I am proceeding 10 to 10, requesting full supervisory relief at precinct headquarters. I try to override the system to break rank. The voice is icy. You are logged as 10 to 10, Sergeant. Disoriented and refusing orders. If you fail to comply with the 10 to 8 assignment, the record remains unsolved. The word hits me like a physical blow. Unsolved. The first chilling entry in my compromised logbook. The ultimate failing of law enforcement. I realized what my final choice is. The system doesn't want my life. It wants the closure of the file. It wants the paperwork to be clean, even if the method of cleaning it is my own disappearance. I pull the car over onto a dimly lit street corner, away from the main road. I turn off the engine and sit in the silence, the wipers cutting slowly across the rain-streaked glass. The radio is hissing aggressively, threatening further procedural violations. I have two options. 1. Follow the ghost protocol. Drive to 4 to 19. Wait for relief. And become the next cold case, thereby achieving procedural completion. Solved. 2. Follow human protocol. Drive to the precinct. Report the vehicle, the shield, the body, and the temporal loop, resulting in a documented failure, 10 to 10, disoriented, and leaving Morales' case permanently open, unsolved, but saving my life. I grabbed the compromised 10 to 7 logbook from my pocket, the one that started it all. I open it, staring at the faded pencil line that says unsolved. I realize that the logbook itself is the key. It's the mechanism that trapped Morales, who failed to report his partner's violation, leaving the file open. The horror is in the lack of finality. I take a deep breath and grab the heavy-duty ink pen from my console. I violate the final, unwritten rule: never alter an official report after the fact. I skip to the next available blank line on the logbook, the line dated tomorrow, and I write, clearly and firmly, my name and unit number. And under the incident notes column, I write, 10 to 87, information to be filed, 10 to 66 report satisfied. Officer Morales/Hansen, case closed. I initial it heavily. It's an act of pure, bureaucratic defiance. I am closing the ghost case with nothing but administrative force. I am using the broken rulebook to complete the system's demand for closure. Supernatural resolution. The moment the pen leaves the paper, the radio emits one final, deafening crackle, like a pane of glass shattering, and then falls utterly, profoundly silent. The cultured voice is gone. The static ceases. The only sound is the rain. The air in the car warms immediately. The cold dread vanishes. I grab the mic, my hands shaking, and transmit to the real dispatch. 4. Sierra, 40, 10 to 8. In service. Requesting clearance for return to precinct. Time 0340. Priority 3, routine. Teresa's tired voice comes back. Normal, non-panicked. 10 to 4, 4 to 40. You sound like you just saw a ghost, Sarge. Head on in. It's been a quiet night. A quiet night. Because I chose paperwork over compliance. I chose to enforce a final, self-written protocol, and in doing so, I closed a 25-year-old file. I think some crimes were never meant to be solved, but they can be contained if you know the exact bureaucratic language required to seal the file shut. Protocol is not optional. It is the ultimate weapon against the things that live outside of the structure. I drive toward the precinct. The fog is lifting. The city feels normal again. But the compromised logbook, now marked closed, sits heavy in my pocket, evidence of a successful negotiation with the void. I pull the unit, 4 Sierra 40, into the precinct lot. The blue lights flash once and die. The engine ticks as it cools, the only sound apart from the residual whisper of the rain, now reduced to a light drizzle. I don't move immediately. I just sit, breathing in the cold, neutral air of the newly returned reality. I reach into my pocket and pull out the artifacts. Morales' shield, still cold, but less intensely so. The blood-soaked 10-66 report from the messenger, now dry and brittle. And the compromised logbook, marked definitively, closed. I know none of this can enter the official evidence room. The story it tells is too impossible. It belongs in a safe deposit box, or maybe the bottom of the East River. It is the cost of my successful 10-8 return. I look at the dash. The clock reads 3:52. The time distortion is gone. The long night, which felt like weeks of looping terror, lasted less than 2 hours. I open the door and step out. The fluorescent lights of the precinct house spill across the asphalt. I walk toward the entrance, leaving the unit running. The ghost of protocol is satisfied. The record is clean. But as I reach the door, I pause, listening to the silence. I can still hear the distant, faint hum of the squad car radio. I turn back, looking through the front windshield at the seat I just vacated. And there, leaning against the headrest, almost transparent but undeniably present, is the figure of